1st of January 45 is a date I can never forget. Hitler had decided to make a final counterattack, final offensive to try and drive us back to the Channel port. So this was we were told was a personal decision. So they requisitioned every serviceable aircraft, truck, tank, everything they could find. They conscripted boys from the ages of 14 up men aged 70 to make this final push. On the 1st of January 45, day after New Year's Eve, a colleague and I were crossing the camp when two low-flying aircraft came and were strafing the camp from one end to the other, and other units which were around us. The instinctive thing to do is to take cover, and the nearest thing under which we could take cover was a 3-ton truck. So we dived under it. We stayed under there. Seemed like ages. It was probably only a matter of a couple of minutes. And when the planes had flown off, we came out. The regimental sergeant major happened to be passing, and he said, "Have you been sheltering under that truck?" And we said yes. And he said, "Well, do you know what's on it?" And we said no. And he said, "It's full of ammunition. Everything you can imagine, from bullets to mortars to, it was all on there. And one stray bullet, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. It would have been the most wonderful firework display." But we were very fortunate. And I felt then, and I have thought several times since, that somebody up there must have been looking after me. And the Sergeant Major took us to the cookhouse for a cup of hot sweet tea. We were shocked, and I think he was as well, and we overcame that. And the other thing that I omitted to say was that a few days afterwards we had a message from our headquarters to say there was an German armoured division making its way towards us, and only about 5 kilometres away. And we fully expected to be taken prisoner. We were all convinced this was going to happen. As I mentioned before, my brother Bob had been captured in North Africa. I thought I'd be joining him. So that my first duty was to destroy what was known as the unit war diary. Every unit had to keep a war diary of everything that happened every day. And that was top secret. It had to be destroyed, together with a lot of other secret and restricted papers. So they were all burned. And then, fortunately for us, we had a tank division called the Guards Armoured Division, which intercepted the German attack, and there was a battle, and they destroyed 4 Tiger tanks. So we came out of it, and we weren't taken prisoner, and we had to start writing a new war diary. And so that, again, was a bit of luck. Where we returned to England, had our leave, went out to India. We went out on the Mauritania, which was one of the largest luxury liners of its day. There have been a lot of Mauritanias. This one obviously had been converted into a troop ship, and we weren't living on cruise conditions, I can tell you. But it wasn't all that difficult. Somebody taught me to play solo, and I was very successful, and I won a lot of money, which annoyed the people who had taught me. And I came off in Kure, which is the Japanese port we were travelling to, rather richer than when I went on board. We went into what was then Bombay, which is now Mumbai. 3 days out of Bombay, the powers that be decided that everybody on board had to be vaccinated against smallpox, because it was endemic in India, probably still is. So regardless of when you had a vaccination, you had to have another one. And I lost 3 days of my life. I went down into a coma with a smallpox infection, and the next thing I knew was I woke up in a military hospital in Bombay, so 3 days later. And we were sent to a camp, under campus on the coast, not terribly far from Bombay, and that's where we settled down, if you could call it that. Not far away, there was a place where Gandhi, you all remember Gandhi, a very anti-British gentleman, and he had a group of people, and every now and again they would try to start a little bit of trouble, and we had to be on the alert for this all the time. But life was very peaceful there. It was extremely hot. It was always in the 90s, and we started work at about, I think, 6:30 in the morning. We had 3 hours for lunch, which was called tiffin, of course, out there, and we finished quite late in the evening. And we got to know the local characters. First one that springs to mind was the charwalla. He was a fellow who walked around the camp all day with a huge cauldron of hot, sweet tea, which he sold to you, and I didn't try it. I'll tell you why in a moment. And the other fellow was the dobi walla. The charwalla, by the way, is where we get the word char. A cup of char came from India. The dobi walla was the laundry man. He came round every day, collected your laundry, returned it the following day, beautifully pressed, a few buttons missing, and the reason for that was that the village women would wash your clothes by beating them against rocks in the village pond. That was their method of cleaning. They did, so it worked. They came back beautifully clean, but as I say, with a few buttons missing. And I calculated they lost about 10% of their life expectancy every time they had a bashing on the rocks. And then we were able to get replacements. While we were there, we were struck by a typhoon, which is a whirlwind, tremendous strength, like a huge vacuum virtually, picked our dining tent, which was large enough to cater for 250 people, picked it out of the ground and deposited it somewhere away, and several of our tents were picked up, together with our belongings, scattered all over the place. And we spent half a day going around trying to find our things. Some of them we recovered. I always thought of it as the first Bermuda Triangle. Some things we never found again. I had a short leave in a place called Colaba holiday camp. It's an army holiday camp, quite close to Bombay on the coast. Spent Christmas Day there. We had Christmas lunch on the beach, Christmas dinner. The sergeant knew I wanted a meat eater, so instead of turkey and bacon and sausages, I had baked beans, and he'd put a sprig of holly on the top, which I thought was rather nice, to give it the festive feeling. And then eventually it was decided to disband the unit. In the meantime, a posting had come through for me and my friend Vic to go to New Delhi, which was the headquarters of the British Army in India. And we had calculated we probably had 2 years' service to do, and we weren't very happy about the idea of spending 2 years peacetime in India, in the headquarters.